The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has stopped the Nigerian government from going on with its Nigerian Air agreement reached with Ethiopia Airlines. About 8 domestic airlines under the umbrella of the Airline Operators of Nigeria sued the Nigerian government to court, listing Nigerian Air, Ethiopian Airlines, Minister of Aviation Hadi Sirika, and the Attorney General of the Federation Abubakar Malami as defendants. The court, through Justice Louis Alagoa, granted an order of interim injunction restraining the federal government from executing the proposed or draft agreement of the establishment of a national carrier between Ethiopian Airlines and Nigeria. Okay, now let's discuss this a little bit further with Roland Iyayi, who is the former managing director of the Nigerian Airspace Mangement Agency, NAMA. It's good to have you in the studios in Abuja this morning. Thank you for coming through, sir. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. Now, can you talk to us a little bit what the mindset of the Airline Operators of Nigeria could be in moving ahead to stop this deal?
So thank you very much. The AON is not averse to having a national carrier. What we have said and what we're saying is that the structure and the design that is being put together currently by the Honorable Minister of Aviation is a bit of an issue which we believe is not going to help the Nigerian state in the long term. He has come out to tell us that this is intended to be a private, public-private partnership. And indeed, if that is the case, we have a situation where we need to query, as a matter of fact, question a lot of all the issues that have happened to date. We have found the need to question the transparency of a project, because we believe that most of the issues that have been raised or that are coming up are not entirely transparent. So we have issues with that. We've also come to find out, going through all the documentation that's been provided, that there are undue privileges that are going to be given to this new carrier, which the current domestic operators are not enjoying. For instance, the government is proposing, or the minister is proposing, to have a 15-year tax moratorium to the national carrier. And again, let's be very clear. This is not a national carrier in the context in which it's been presented. This is actually a flag carrier, simply because if you're bringing in a strategic investor at 49%, and you have other institutional investors, one of which is 60% owned by a foreign entity, in the long term, what you're putting together is actually a foreign airline being allowed to come into the Nigerian airspace to operate at variance with the Article 7 of the ICAO Convention, which will be cabotage. So we're saying that this is not in the longer term interest of the Nigerian public. In any case, if you also review the outline business case that was put together by the ministry, it will seem to us that this is a contrived outcome, which has been decided even long before the arrangement was reached. So we believe that ultimately the Nigerian public will not necessarily benefit. There will be unfair competition if you allow a new carrier to come in with special privileges that the other carriers are not getting. Again, we have a situation where if you look at what the outline business case as presented is, it would appear to us that this whole process would end up in a contrived outcome, because it would appear that the choice of Ethiopian Airlines was already decided even before the process started. So these are the issues we took to court, asking the court to determine whether or not we have a case in the matter. Ultimately, Ethiopian Airlines has gone ahead to list Nigeria Air as its subsidiary on its website. I don't think Nigerians want a national carrier that will be a subsidiary of another country. Nigerians are looking forward to having a national carrier that will be its own and fully owned by Nigerians. So that is essentially where these issues come up. We're talking about unfair competition. We're talking about a contrived outcome. We're talking about lack of transparency. And we're talking about undue privileges that ultimately will result in a distorted market, which at the end of the day would decimate the domestic market to the detriment of the Nigerian consumers.
Very valid point you've raised, Mr. Roland Iyayi. Thank you very much for unpacking the situation on the ground for us. But I'm going to ask you this question. Going to court is within the purview of the local airline operators. But at the moment, based on what you've said, we've got the National Assembly, which is a lawmaking body in this country. Don't you think this matter should go straight to the National Assembly to call all parties and present all evidences and everything on the table? If there is anything in the interest or not in the interest of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, the National Assembly, the relevant committee or joint committee should look into that.
We've actually been to the National Assembly. I mean, we had a sitting at the House of Reps, and then we also had a sitting at the Senate. The outcome of a sitting at the Senate was that we should arrange a further meeting, brokered by the Senate, so that all parties can come together and then all the issues we have can be addressed. But unfortunately, we've been informed by the Senate Committee on Aviation that the Honorable Minister is unavoidably absent. And that being the case, and we have a process that is ongoing, we don't want a situation where we are left with a fait accompli, and of course, at the end of the day, it means that we have absolutely nothing we can really do. We want to have a recourse. I would believe in the absence of being able to sit around a table and negotiate the issues we have, our next best option, the recourse, would be to go to court. And that's essentially what we have done. And that's why we believe that, in the interest of the Nigerian public and the state, it is important that we take the steps we've taken. Okay, well, that's fair enough. But there is so much opposition to the proposed partnership with Ethiopian Airlines. What is the alternative? How do we get a national carrier that would be in the interest of everyone in the industry, not just the interest of you, the Airline Operators of Nigeria, but the wider interest of the economy of the Federal Republic of Nigeria as a whole? Well, thank you very much. I mean, if the government believes that there's a need to have a national carrier, which, yes, we have said there's a need to, because when you have a national carrier and you have the full weight of a state behind you, a lot of things can get done because the basis of every bilateral or multilateral agreement is reciprocity. Now, if we have that and the domestic, look, what we have seen by the agreement that's been put together to be signed with a strategic equity partner is essentially removing all the bottlenecks that Nigerian domestic carriers are faced with. So if you're doing that for a national carrier, why can you not do the same thing for the domestic carriers with the capacity to do exactly what you're saying you want to do? So the point is, we believe that this, if the larger interest of the Nigerian people is taken into consideration, then what we believe to be done is that the government would unpack an arrangement where you will not bring into your market your competitor. We see Ethiopian Airlines as a major competitor based on the African air traffic market that's been put into place. Now, assuming we have a carrier from, say, the Gulf, for instance, they would make sure that they would add value to the Nigerian aviation system. But the truth is, Ethiopian has no business adding value to you because they cannot start talking about building you a hub in Nigeria when they already have a hub in Ethiopia. So we essentially believe that what they are trying to do is have access into our market in order to grow their hubs. And it is not going to be in the longer term interest of the Nigerian people or the Nigerian industry. So we're saying that you need to have an arrangement that will be a win-win situation if at all there's a need for a national carrier. Okay. Mr. Iyayi, as it is today, how many Nigerian airlines, Nigerian-owned airlines on the ground has the capacity or has a license to do international flights? Well, as we speak, about 4 or 5 domestic carriers have been designated into regional and international intercontinental destinations. But beyond designating airlines, there's a need for the government to ensure that the host country reciprocates the basis of the agreements reached by the multilateral or the bilateral agreements. I'll give an example. If you have an airline designated to fly into London, you must ensure that the UK authorities provide access to Heathrow Airport, which is a primary airport, in the UK. Not sending the Nigerian carrier to a secondary airport like maybe a Luton or Stansted or Gatwick. Those are the issues. Nigerian travelers don't want to go to those airports. But if you now designate a Nigerian carrier that is forced to go to any of those airports, you are already killing that airline before they even start flying. So we're saying if you empower the domestic carriers with capacity, then of course we can achieve exactly the same thing you're trying to achieve using a national carrier. Now, in this particular case of a national carrier, the government is going to be indemnifying that national carrier. It is supposed to be a private entity. If it's a private entity, why do we have to have the taxpayers' money indemnify that same entity? So these are issues we have raised. If any Nigerian airline were to be given a 15-year tax moratorium, given a dedicated terminal, given access to cheap funds, these are all the bottlenecks Nigerian airlines have been talking about forever, but they have never been addressed. But all of a sudden, we're talking about being addressed with this particular national carrier, which we know, even from the outline business case, it was called a flag carrier. But it is presented to the Nigerian public as a national carrier. A national carrier will be fully or substantially owned by the Nigerian government. Right now, Nigerian government only holds 5%. And other investors hold the remainder of the 95%. So for us, if it is said to be a PPP, that means you're talking about a public-private partnership. A PPP would not necessarily be a national asset. So we're saying we should not be hoodwinked to believe that this is a national carrier when in actual fact, it is a private carrier to be flagged as a Nigerian carrier going into international destinations, but given special privileges. That is where we have an issue, because those privileges will create a distortion in the market. It will be unfair competition. It will kill the domestic carriers. Ultimately, it will create a huge problem for the consumers, because when you have a near monopoly, because when you come into the market and there's a fares war, some airlines will pass away. And when that happens, what happens? You end up having a near monopoly, and once that happens, there will be a capacity issue. With the capacity issue will be fare increases. When fares go up, the air transport sector becomes unaffordable. And the benefits the government would have looked at in trying to make sure the economies are opened up and all that would have been lost. So what we're saying is that this particular project, as put together, is not in the longer term interest of the Nigerian state, and it should be held, it should be taken as such and stopped.
Well, just to sum it up with you, sir, would your association respect whatever the decision of the court is on the case that you have instituted?
Absolutely. The reason we went to court is to ask the court to determine, on the basis of law, based on all the findings we've reached, to say that are we in order to have asked.
So you're going to respect the law. You're going to respect whatever the decision of the court is. Absolutely. Are you prepared to pursue this all the way to the Supreme Court?
No. Listen, again, we believe, based on what we've presented to the courts, we believe that we have a very solid case. A very, very solid case.
But you can lose it. But you can lose it.
In doubt.
You never can tell what the judge will decide. You're not the judge.
Well, fair enough. If the judge decides, we're at liberty to review the judgment and decide whether or not there's any need for the next steps. But we believe strongly that we have a very good case, and on the basis of all the things we've presented, the factual evidence, which indeed were documents provided by the ministry themselves. It is not our document, it is their document. So we're asking the court to speak to those documents just to let us understand if indeed all that has been done according to the law. That's all we've asked.
All right. We'll see you back in the studios in the very near future. Thank you so much, Mr. Roland Iyayi, the former managing director of the Nigerian Airspace Management Agency. Thank you so much, and do have a great day. Thank you. I appreciate it.